Hey, it's Doc Jen, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and I want to talk about some remedies you could do to help those wrists in things like push-ups, planks, anything when we're on the ground. A lot of complaints of wrist pain. Before I became a doctor of physical therapy, I was a Pilates instructor, so I heard a lot about this. So you're not alone. A lot of people suffer with this, so let's talk about what you can do. Now, one of the first things that I want to go over is when we're on our hands, even if I'm just in this quadruped position, what happens a lot is that people end up dropping and leaning into their wrists and their fingers. This isn't me gripping the ground. This is actually me dumping into my wrist. So I end up putting a lot of tension and pressure because I'm dumping in my chest, I'm dumping from my shoulder blades, and I'm just coming forward onto my wrists. Now that places so much tension on my wrist. One of the best things that we can do, and I'm going to talk about a lot of things we can do, 5 things actually, but the first thing and one of the most important things I think to remember is that anytime we're placing our hands on the ground, the best thing that we can do to start to take pressure off of it is, one, understanding where we're putting that pressure toward our fingertips, not just dumping in the wrist, but 2 is using our core, and not just this front abdominal muscle, but your entire pillar, which comes from your shoulder blades. Because if I can use my shoulder blades to help press away, my core to lift, and then I push into my fingertips, all of a sudden I am not putting nearly as much pressure into my wrist. So just come down and try that for me real quick. So come into this position. I want you to push into your fingertips right away. I want you to push your shoulder blades down as if you're pushing the chest and the sternum away from the ground. And then I want you to think of engaging through that core and kind of lifting. All of a sudden, I made a really strong back from my shoulder blades all the way down into my fingertips, and I'm taking so much pressure off my wrist. So if that helped your wrist just from doing that, comment below and let me know. And we can obviously check that, right? So I want to press, push, and then come into a full plank. What does it feel like? Can I still push into my fingertips? My fingertips should be working. My flexors, these muscles here in my forearms, are working to push hard into the ground, as well as my chest, my shoulder blades, and my entire core is pressing away from the ground, because this is what's going to help to protect my wrist in the long run. So anytime you're dropping in those shoulder blades, we're putting too much pressure on those wrists. Now we can go on to remedy 2, and that is just rolling up your mat. So if I just come here and roll up my mat a few times, I make a higher surface so I can drop my fingers lower, still putting pressure into my fingertips, still putting pressure into my core, but now I'm dropping the angle of my wrist. So rather than forcing it into a flat position, I'm allowing it to come out just a little bit more, which puts my wrist sometimes in that more natural position that you may be used to and have that mobility for. Okay. Now, the third thing that you can do, if that is still not working, you can grab weights. So grabbing weights is an option, but we want to make sure that we're using the weights the same way that we would in a push-up. So in a push-up, your hand is coming forward this way, and ideally, our elbows are coming out at a diagonal, not pinching into the side, not forced out to the outside. They're coming right at a diagonal. So what I like to set my weights up is also at a slight diagonal here, because this puts me in a lot better position to go into my push-up and come out. So again, rather than having my weights completely forward, because that's going to put a lot of pressure onto my front of my shoulders, instead, I bring it out to a little bit of an angle, grip the entire weight, and then come into that push-up and out. If that made a little bit of a difference for you, especially if you're used to push-ups on weights, let me know. Comment below. Now, another way that we can modify and prevent this is by actually just elevating the surface. So I'm going to bring this bench over, and what I'm doing here is I'm thinking of coming up. Now, when I'm coming up into this elevated surface, all of a sudden, I have way less range that my wrist needs to go into. And if you slow a push-up down, even though you're raising the surface, it is still challenging, it can still be one of the best exercises. So let me show you. You come up, push into those fingertips, and we're going to go slow. Elbows toward that diagonal, touch that sternum or that low rib cage, and then press all the way away, all the way. So you don't want to be too far back. You don't want to be too far forward. We want like nipple line or right under the nipple line, coming straight down and straight up. When I'm using pressure into my fingertips, when I'm using that full range of motion in my shoulder blades and I slow that movement down, it becomes harder. So it's not just about repping out crazy reps. That's not really going to do anything for the body. Slow and intention, especially if you're having wrist pain, really helps when you elevate the surface. Now, I do have one last remedy for you, and this is probably one of the most important remedies besides the first one that I talked about, and that is actually warming up your wrist before we go into exercises that you're going to be down on the ground. So what that can look like is sitting on your heels and giving your wrists a little bit of a stretch into that extension, breathing, relaxing into that new range of motion, relaxing those flexors that are going to be doing a lot of the work as you're pressing those fingertips into the ground. And then one of my favorite things is to put tension and pressure into that range. So I'm going to lean over until I can comfortably get into a good position. So for me, that's here. For you, that might be back. Okay. You're going to press into your fingertips without letting your fingers relax and straighten. They're going to stay nice and stiff. And you come up, use your upper body to help. And then you slowly come down, slow, until you get into that good stretch. And then right back up, slow. And this stretch is as much of a lean as you can tolerate. No pain. Nice and slow, and we're warming up those flexors. And then for the extensors, you're going to sit it back and you're going to extend those fingers up to the ceiling and then grab and stretch. And then extend those fingers and try to pull back into as much extension in for those wrists as you can. And then pull back. And this is actually what's going to create that better mobility so you can actually get flat into those hands. Oftentimes, we're not flat here. We're a little bit higher. And then we say, oh, let me take this range of motion and stuff it on the ground. Of course, you're going to have some tension and pain in those wrists. We have to work on that mobility if we want to be putting pressure, tension, and load onto that joint. Don't forget, if you love what you're learning, I have so much more in stock for you. So hit that subscribe button, check out the other videos I've done in the past, and leave any comments of any suggestions that you have for videos in the future. And I can't wait to help you feel incredible and amazing within your body.